What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Failed podcast. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Thank y'all for the support as we're continuing to bring great conversations, great interviews about life, about failures, and what we've learned along the way. The Failed podcast has been on a great journey. I feel like it's evolving right in front of my face as I'm starting to make more connections in my community, and I'm starting to see the value of the Failed podcast and what it can do through individuals, through like companies and organizations. And so I'm super motivated to have today's guest, because in a way, that's what we have shared is like community, connection, business, and we've had hours of conversation about life, about struggles, and just motivation going both ways. I have definitely grown from our conversations. And with that being said, I want to welcome Coleman to the Failed podcast. Coleman, thank you for coming by today. How are you doing?
Oh, absolutely awesome, man. Yeah. It's just thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be here. We've been saying we were going to sit down sometime, and we've sat down many of times, but not in front of the camera and not in this setting. And so I'm super excited to sit in this setting with you today.
You know, I don't have that many people in my life where I have multiple conversations, deep conversations about a variety of things, and we don't record them. And so they happen, and they're in essence, they're lost. I mean, I've retrieved, I've accepted them. I've took to practice a lot of things that you said, but man, we didn't record them. Sometimes I'm like, man, I should have recorded some of our conversations. But I think that's what makes it special, is that we do, and we are able to share whenever there's not a camera rolling. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Yeah. Before we get into the interview, I just want to let everybody know that me and you office out of the same building. You came in here, and I heard you in a meeting, and you had all this energy, and we met, but we ran into each other. We didn't meet, and then with enough time and us walking by each other, we finally met. And Coleman, there's something about you that's just very open. As soon as I said hi, you reciprocated. You were always very open and friendly with me. Where did that come from? How did you become like this? Just when you walk around and talk, people just like, that's Coleman, because I've seen you already move around in like a networking event.
Oh, sure. No. It's just about people, man. That's what it's all about. It's about connection and people and community. And the thing that I've learned in my life thus far, and many travels and journeys, that it's a lifelong lesson and an accomplishment to be able to say, man, I've seen that before, and I've seen many things, and I've been up and I've been down, been sideways, upside down, and sometimes you feel like you wasn't going to make it, but then there's just something that's innate that wells up inside of you and just says, look here, the destiny has already been set. You just got to walk the journey, but it's not going to be you alone. It's going to be the people that you meet along the way. Because once again, we've talked about it multiple times. Your network is your net worth, and those that we connect with, just like us. There's a special connection because each time we've had a conversation, I've had those chill bumps when you leave, and you're just like, man, this is real. And when you meet real people, you have to identify that, and then also compliment that, and I appreciate your realness and your transparency, and it's paramount. But that's what that comes from. It's just meeting people along the way, and just enjoying people and meeting people where they're at. Everybody's not going to be what you expect, but they can turn into something that you didn't expect, right? Something that there was a piece of the puzzle that was missing, and just because everybody has an assignment, sometimes they just don't know what the assignment is yet.
You think you figured out your assignment in life? Don't give it away so soon, but do you think you figured it out?
Oh, I'm still growing and learning, but from what I know today, I know what my assignment is.
All right. Well, we're gonna go back. We're gonna travel back in time. I want you to tell us a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, what was your home life, family life that you can remember, and you can go back as far as you want, and then from there we'll progress into the now.
Oh yeah, no. In my story, and then we'll talk about it. It's coming out. And we've talked about the book, writing a book. It's called Mary's Baby, right? And it goes all the way back to the beginning. And I won't bore everyone with the details thus yet. But we started in a small town, Cleveland, Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Born in Fort Worth. My mother was a nurse. My father worked the railroad, then became a sheriff's officer, as my grandfather was part of the sheriff's office. So it was kind of cool to watch the evolution of that. But I lived with my grandparents. I lived with Alfred and Mary Johns, and when I say Mary's Baby, that's where Mary Johns is.
So you Mary's baby.
I'm Mary's baby. Yeah. So,
what are some of the memories you have back then? Times were different. There was no internet, technology wasn't where it was. What kind of young person were you? Were you active? What hobbies were you into? I'm digging in because I'm trying to figure out what makes Coleman. I'm going to figure it out today. So tell me a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, growing up, we were always on the move, and it was really cool because it wasn't until the past few years and books that I've read that I could really just digest a lot of my upbringing. But being able to take those same trips from the Great Migration, and we did. So back then we had family reunions, right? So each family member hosted it. So I can remember going to San Francisco, and my aunt Maudel would. She was that person that talked about wealth and how you build wealth and how you sustain, and she was the that rock part of the family, and that was the older sister that kind of took care of everything in the Johns family side, and then we'd travel up to Detroit, that same route, the Great Migration, and you could go see. Now we stopped in the little towns, and you could feel the differences as you traveled in the town, especially in the 70s. It was much different.
When you say the Great Migration, can you kind of explain that to us just so we can all be on the same page?
Sure. The Great Migration, that was when the South was just really rough during Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. And you would see a large population of African Americans that would leave the South and head north to where they could work and be treated as humans somewhat. It's like that thing. It was just different. They were able to go make a wage, and it wasn't sharecropping, and it wasn't, plowing fields, but they could do real work. And so they found a way to make real work. And you had the Pullman's porters, where you had the porters that were the train, and that's why you see a lot of African American have a tie to the railroad, because the trains where they would work, the Pullman's porters, they would travel those directions and head up north. And so those journeys were so precious, and they would, bags of chicken and things that you see, that are great today, but that bags of chicken, the soggy bag, they took their own food. They took everything from the South with them, the comforts of home, and that's how some of the meals made it up north. And you find the same thing on the West Coast. So you'll see that same trending, because they would travel outside of the Deep South so they could escape Jim Crow. So being able to take those travels and navigate those paths, it really came to it really brought something to me, and I was like, I had an opportunity to make those travels and make the connections and to be able to see and feel the things along the way, because you could feel the difference and how it was just a little bit different the further away you got from the South from that time. And things are, of course, always getting better, but those things back then, it really, really stood out in how my father, my grandfather, and my uncles would react in certain places, and I would watch them and learn how you react, what to do, how to stay out of trouble.
Give me an instance about their reactions, because of the time you're talking about. Although it was in the 70s, if you traveled in particular areas, it could still be a little bit of hate there. Oh, yeah. What did you see? And I know it came from hate and racism, but there's still value in it because you experienced it, because you grew out of it. So what have you taken that's supposed to hold you down, but now you say, no, I see my grandfather, I see my father like this, and that's why I'm a better man. That kind of came from that description that you just gave.
Oh, absolutely, because I am my grandfather's child. We have a lot of things in common, and one of the things that he did well was he changed. He was not a thermometer. He was a thermostat. And so when the room environment was subpar, when he walked into the room, he elevated the room to make sure that when he walked in, he illuminated something that said, wait a minute, I can't just walk all over this guy. It was just something about the way that he carried himself and the way that he thought of himself, because he thought highly of himself. And that's what we all should think highly of ourselves, not to be boastful or braggadocious or any of those things. It was just more of having confidence and self-confidence and self-esteem. When he walked into the room, you just knew that he was there. And he'd always play this song, I paid a cost to be the boss. And it was old songs, but that's the way he walked in. That's the way he carried himself. But when you could see, you'd have a lady just, hey, sunshine, and it was a derogatory term, but to watch him smile and look back and say, hey, my name's Alfred, how are you? And then, boom, you could see that instantly change and call him by his name. And then he made us proud of our last name as well. So Johns was a name, and I was the last one to carry that name, but now we have more. But it was really important for him that our name meant something, not just in a city, but wherever we went. And so he carried that with him, and that, I believe that's a lot of what I see today in myself, as I try to make sure that I watch people change their reaction because they say, I didn't like that person. Well, they didn't know that person. But now they're like, well, I have to change my mind now because I realized it wasn't the people that I hated. I hated some actions. It wasn't a person, and it wasn't a group of people. So that's the thing that I always carried with me, and I carried from him, and I carried from that time, because we can change things. It's all about we teach people how to treat us, right? So
now walking into a room, and there's one thing where you just have this energy about you, but when you walk in and you know it, like I change rooms when I walk in. What were some intentional things that he would do that you do now? Because a lot of people are watching and we want to be room changers, but it's intimidating and it's hard. Like, I don't know what about you has to exist to have that confidence. What did he have and what do you have that are similar now?
Yeah, you check yourself at the door before you leave home, right? It's when life happens to everybody, but we don't carry that with us everywhere into every situation. And that's something that I really learned from him, because it could be something going on at home and with the family or with extended family or what have you. There's always something. But one thing that I saw, that in the community, everyone seemed to come to him to get assistance of some sort because he understood the laws. He worked at the courthouse, although he worked at night at Santa Fe on the railroad in the boiler room, and then that part during the day he was the bailiff, and he had access to the judges and the people in the courthouse, the clerks, everyone else. And when he walked in, everyone always acknowledged who he was, although he was a tall man, and just the way that he appeared, his appearance was that of not, some meager downtrodden man. So I've learned to walk with my shoulders back and my head up, knowing that there's pride there as well. But that room-changing thing, it was more about being able to help somebody else. And when he walked in, he wasn't trying to say, I need this from you, but he was always open, saying, what can I do to help you?
I got the what can I do to help you, because I struggle walking in rooms. Like I feel like I need to walk in a room and have a Coleman next to me so that I can kind of like feed off of your confidence and feed off of your energy. When you would walk in with him, what was the feeling of, like, because you almost feel like, yeah, I'm with my grandpa. You know what I mean? How proud were you to walk in with him? And when did that confidence become independent? When did you separate yourself from him and say, now I'm walking in with the same thing?
Oh, that was many years later. But the confidence of walking into a room with him was just, it's a paramount experience. You can't hardly describe it. It's like walking in, anytime we walked into a room, it's like walking into a room with a superstar, or you walking in the room with Superman in front of you, right? You just know that everything's going to be okay. It doesn't matter what else is in the room. As long as he was there, everything was going to be all right.
Yeah.
And he also had that persona of one of the great people that I watched grow up, and as growing up, and as I got older, I could see it. And he said something that was very important. Like everybody did ask, like, I know this person's in the room for this reason, this person's in the room for this reason, but why is he here?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't seem like he belongs. He doesn't have any stake in this, really. Why is he in the room? And it was said that he's here because he represents everybody. Who do you represent? Everyone. Yeah. Everyone's interest, because I'm looking at it from the top down and not trying to figure out what belongs to me within the environment and situation. So
now, you obviously, the book is in the work. Mary's baby, your grandmother. Mm-hmm. You give a lot of credit to her. You talk about her with so much love and passion. Talk to me a little bit about how you saw her and how she carried herself and what she taught you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. We don't have
short
that
version.
long. Yeah, we don't have that long. But no, she taught me a lot because it was important. She taught me sacrifice. Because by the age of 10, my grandfather was young. He passed away when I was 12. And she says, you are the man of the house, and I need you to stand up like this now. And I need you to make sure that, things are taken care of. And you need to learn to, handle things on your own. And then as she would teach and speak, there were certain things that she would teach me along the way that I didn't get until much later, but I have them and hold them all dear now. That's, certain times of night, you don't need to be out doing things because there's not anything else going on. Like, you need to head to the house. And I would always be upset, man, why can't I go hang out with everybody else? But then you come back and you find out that those people are no longer here because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's just so much that she taught me along the way that I carry today of how to move, how to look around, how to make sure you're aware of your surroundings and the character of the people that you associate with. And you don't have to associate with everybody, but there's a small few. If you have, she used to say, if you have one friend, you've done a good job. If you have two, then you've done an excellent job. And if you get three, you better look around.
Well, I've done a few studies about friendship. Mm-hmm. And they say, when you're young in high school, it kind of messes with your head because you think having a lot of friends is normal, but it's not real. It's just because of your environment. When you get older, if you have 5 friends mm-hmm. in your life, and that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a difficult thing, and there's a lot of people out there struggling with making connections with other like-minded people, like whenever it doesn't have necessarily to do about business or there's not an objective, there's just good conversation. You open up, I open up, and naturally, me and you found ourselves there. Mm-hmm. Why, guys need to figure out how to get there. Yeah. Do you do it intentionally? Because I can imagine, Coleman, you ain't got enough time for all the people that you meet.
Right.
And you're so friendly, but not everyone can be your friend. How do you manage? How do you balance being that person where you attract people to you, but you have to bring a balance because you only have room for a few to really connect with?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's all about definition, right? And so we redefine, as we've gotten older, I've learned to redefine what friends are, right? So there's a difference between acquaintances, friends, and associates, right? But there's different categories for people, but we, as humans, use that term friend and love so loosely that everybody fits in the thing, and now we're stressed because we can't keep up to the thing that we've started. So, and I've always learned this one thing, and I learned it early in life, is never start something that you can't keep up. Mm. And so it's really important that there are people, acquaintances that I'll help anybody. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That doesn't mean friend. I mean, friends are those that, you can call them anytime. Yeah. I still do that for a large group of people. But the same thing it's like real friends, those that I connect with and I feed off of, and and iron sharpening iron, and we can continue to grow and build and talk and find our way in similar paths, mm-hmm. then those are those real true friends that they're like diamonds. You can't, there's the value of them exceeds the human mind at this point.
It's crazy that you use the word diamond because really, really good friends don't show up as good friends. Like it evolved. Like you kind of have to work at it to figure out, is there a good friendship here? Because you got to go through some tests. In your early life, what were some of the challenges that you faced, whether it was in high school or just in sports or something that taught you some valuable lessons?
There's a lot of different things, and I'll go back to this and I'll move forward. But with a diamond, it's created under pressure.
Yeah.
And so you can't have a really good, strong friendship or relationship unless you've had pressure, unless you've had trials and gone through some things, because you don't know what that friend is going to do in the time of pressure. I have a friend that we've met in 9th grade. His name's Ben Johnson. He's actually a part of the team today. And that's the thing, when you've gone through certain things for a long period of time, and I'm talking about real pressures and real life challenges, you find out what the person's made of. And you know that if they're going to stick with you, they're going to stick with you through anything. And those are few and far in between.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, and the things that you mentioned, and growing up, as a kid, I loved basketball. Man, we played basketball day in, day out. We ran in the streets. That was our thing. We'd run. I had a neighbor that was a cousin of mine that ran in the Olympics, and so you've got these people out. We're running. We're actually. You have guys from high school. They're playing football, and we're in 6th, 7th grade, and they don't take it off. They don't make it easier on you. They don't just back up because you're smaller than them.
Yeah.
They're still giving it to you. But you learn to get better from that.
Yeah.
Because when you're challenged, that's when we learn to spread our wings and learn to get above the clouds, and we fly like eagles at that point, because now we strengthen our wings along the way, because we've learned from those situations that people didn't coddle us. They just said, if you don't like what's going on, get stronger or get better. And that was something that was challenging, that always challenged me as I was growing up. I took it as a negative thing as a child. I always go, man, this is not fair. I didn't get the ball. I didn't do this. Man, I couldn't play. I lost this game. Yeah. But you go back and you had to do self-inventory and say, well, guess what? I lost this game. I didn't. It wasn't someone cheated. It wasn't that it was unfair. It was the fact that I lost this game. So if I want to keep playing, I got to get better. Yeah. And so I have to play basketball day in, day out. At night, that's when you find yourself playing on the court, dribbling at 1 o'clock in the morning, still trying to get your skills better, trying to figure out, how am I going to beat these older kids at the sport that they have.
They're ahead of you.
They're way ahead of you in stature, in knowledge, in skill set, the whole 9 yards. They have a good path ahead of you. But if you stay consistent, what I found out is you can catch up.
Yeah. At that age, we start discussing what we want to do in the future. Mm-hmm. Like either outside individuals say, man, you're good at this, you should do that. Or you start saying, oh, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, whatever, right? What were you thinking you were going to do in the future around that time?
I had no clue.
Yeah.
And most people won't be honest with you. I said I was always going to do this.
But I like that answer.
But I'm just going to be honest. I had no clue. Yeah. I can remember growing up, and this is the funny part of the story. I remember high school graduation, standing in my mother's living room going, okay, now what am I going to do next? I didn't, I had opportunities to play ball, go somewhere, but I wanted to stay in Texas. I didn't want to go anywhere else, do anything else. I always wanted to stay in Texas, and so that was my thing. And I didn't know. I was like, what am I going to do? And then military called my name, and I wrote down every place close to Texas on your dream sheet. So if everybody knows what a dream sheet is, that you can pick the places that you want to go. And I was putting everywhere from Louisiana to Texas. I think I even put Kansas because it was close enough. Yeah. I was like, I just want to be somewhere close. And where did I end up? In Basel, Germany. So that's
was that the first time that you went that far away from home?
First time flying overseas, getting out, being on my own, figuring things out. But that's what created a lot of growth. I look back now, and if it had not been that, there would be no this.
Yeah.
Because I learned to navigate on my own. I flew into an airport where I didn't speak the language. and I'm walking around trying to figure out where to go, what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm a young man, I'm 19. I'm like, what do I do? So I figure out how to navigate. But I said this, once I got to my destination, no one else would ever have to do this again. So I would go then at that point, when every time we had a new recruit coming in, I would go meet them so they didn't have to go through the same thing. Yeah. So I always believe in each one, teach one. If you learn something, share it. Yeah. And that way the community grows and you build lifelong friendships that way and lifelong bonds as well.
So whenever you left and you're in Germany, what are some of the misconceptions that you had to break that you learned here? Because you're comfortable here, because you're with your family, because there's routine, you know the smells, you know the food. And then in life, adjustments happen that are meant to kind of throw you off a little bit. Yeah. And then in the adjustment, you find a new version of yourself. How fast did that happen? And what is some of the new things that you learned about yourself when you were in a faraway land, learning new things?
Oh yeah, those are lessons that I still hold dear today. Because the first time I traveled out, I thought, man, everything's just going to change. I left my friends, I left life behind. I know nothing about this place. And as I'm going around and meeting people, one thing that I've learned, and I went from Germany to California, and then I moved all around California and did some things and traveled and went place to place. But one thing that I learned is that the places change, but people are pretty similar in every single place.
Really?
Yeah, the faces may change.
Tell me some similarities in the human being that people think we're so different right now. We're so divided because we're looking at ideas. We're not looking at us like from the heart.
Right.
What are the things that connect us that you've seen from being in Germany, California, Texas?
Yeah, that we all come from somewhere. Yeah. And that's the thing that's important. But we were all born of a woman at some point. We were all born of a woman. That's the one thing, that commonality. We all have that in common. We all bleed red. We all have emotions. We all have feelings. Now, our feelings and emotions are based on how we were raised and where we were raised and how our parents thought about things. And some of us take the information that we receive and we do something totally different with it. But the natural habit is people just generally just stay within that comfort zone and they don't leave it, and they just continue to build their ideals and their ideology on what they know or what they think they know, not on just strictly facts. And that is something that I learned, is to deal with facts, because if you have facts, there's no change, because feelings will change. And the way people present things, and it's like the telephone game, the message may even change if you send it through too many people, but facts don't change. Facts are facts. Now, that's why I said in the beginning of the show, from what I know today, because I've learned, the more that I learn, the more I realize I don't know. Right. So at some point, we all thought the world was flat, right? But we found out that was
some people still do.
It was incorrect.
Nothing but love.
Nothing but love. But it's just one of those things, right? Yeah. That when we look at things and we have facts, then we can make an informed decision. Yeah. And that way, if we don't have to say, I just saw somebody and they were dressed a certain way, so I just made an opinion. I just made a quick judgment. Because that's prejudice, right? Prejudge. So you prejudge someone not knowing them just on their appearance. But once you get to know that person, you go, oh, wow, that's a pretty intelligent individual. I didn't know this, or what have you. But we learn just by getting the facts and talking to people and getting to know them. And once we know them and we meet them where they're at, then we can figure out what that part of the puzzle and relationship, why you met, because I don't believe anything happens by happenstance. Yeah. I think we meet people for a reason, and we attract certain people for a reason and for a purpose. And some are for a lifetime, and some are just for a season. But we meet people for a reason, if it's nothing but to make their day or to make them smile, or to whatever it is, to make sure that they feel the proper energy, that they had an opportunity to meet excellence at one point in time. And that's what's the goal, is to wake up and share excellence with people and love, and the fact that we don't know people and we can't judge them. We don't know what they've been through, but we can meet people where they're at. And that's the most important thing. And that would be fact and not a prejudge, right? Once we know and talk and get to know them and find out, why they are like they are, or what they heard, or what they thought things were. And then we have those strong conversations and go, well, wait a minute, it may be different than I thought. Yeah. And I love seeing that happen. And I shared several stories, but I've seen it happen so many times. I've watched people just change their thought processes right before my eyes and go, well, wait a minute, it's not what I thought it was.
And so, I'm going to back up. You're jumping ahead of me, Coleman. Slow down.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm joking. So, okay. So you start finding your career. You start finding yourself. Right now, you're a businessman. You're a mover and shaker. You're a person that connects people. You do a lot. When did you start learning about yourself and saying, I'm good at this, and it's going to lead to that? When did that start happening? When did you become, when did you go from being a boy to being a man that understands who he is and what he's going to do in this world?
Well, I can say that was probably about in my late 20s, early 30s. I thought about, hey, I need to be consistent.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to do it. That's the time period where I said, all right, you're going to work. You don't miss a day of work. So in 30 years in corporate America, not one day of work missed. Not one call. I didn't call in. I didn't miss work.
Yeah.
Because that was a commitment that I made to myself, that I was going to show up for work every day from the day forward. When I said that, I made a commitment to myself. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing that we can do, is never lie to ourselves, right? Because we already know what's going on. So why not just be honest and say, here's an issue, let's fix it. Because before that, I would show up late, call, I'd figure out a way. But then it was like, wait a minute, I have a family to feed. Mm-hmm. I have people who depend on me. I have people that are around me that are watching. How am I showing up? Yeah. Right? So that's an important thing. Well, how am I showing up? And I can't be who I know I want to be from this point on unless I can make changes in myself first. Then you can change the world. But first, we got to change yourself.
So what were some of the gifts and talents that you had around that time that you were sure of, or maybe someone told you, like, Coleman, you got this, and then you finally realized it and you started moving in it? Because, it's outside forces that realize, man, you're a leader. Man, you're a great communicator. I mean, you're a great problem solver. You don't see it because it's just who you are. When did someone see something in you and you finally said, yeah, it's real?
That would be Mr. John. I remember I got out of the military. I was going to school, and I went back to college, get my degree, and so I go back to engineering. Has been my thing. I've always designed, work with my hands. I like to build things, make things work, and tinker with stuff. I've been doing that. Was one of those things I was doing as a kid. Didn't realize that was a gift. But I was always, doing stuff on people's cars, changing stereos, tinting windows. I always had a hustle doing something. And then I went to the military, and I took ASFAB, and they said, wow, this is what score, like this mechanical engineering stuff, that's in your wheelhouse. So they solidified, and that was the thing. I was like, then I must be fairly good at this.
Yeah. And
then I took that into my trade. The military taught me things. I went back to school, learned those, and then I started working at it was an HD Supply, and I remember it was Mr. John, and I was standing outside, and I had a conversation, and he pulled me aside. He said, you're a pretty sharp guy. I think you're pretty smart. He's like, but let me tell you something. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. And he walked away. And it took me a minute, and it shook me for a second. I saw this man works in the flower shop, and I'm not taking this, and that was my mindset at the time, being a young kid. And I'm still like, So let me go talk to this gentleman. So I went back and I talked with him. The more I talked with him, the more he made me understand that there's a way to handle yourself to where you don't always look like you're the smartest person and you're giving everybody advice. You're like, let people come to you for advice instead of you just sharing advice. He's like, you're smart, but there's always somebody smarter, and go learn from them. And so I kind of took that and I started learning from him. And he was one of my first people, I would say, that had that mentorship, that could talk and tell you things. And then he would bring me and sit me to the side and we just chat. And I always thought, this guy, man, he doesn't look like he had anything. And it's like, how are you doing this? And one day he did this on purpose. He's on his way to Vegas, and he pulled up in a brand new car. He picked up the back trunk, and there's bags of just money orders, and there's just cash. I
was like, what was it?
I'm like, what in the world? And he's like, well, me and Mama headed to Vegas. He said, I was a cashier's checks. He's like, me and Mama are headed to Vegas. I just wanted to stop by and tell you I appreciate you, and I don't ever want you to think that you're not supposed to have things, because we're supposed to have things, but things are not supposed to have us. Yeah. And as he walked away and rode off, it set, and that began a thought process today, is like we can have what we want to have, but we also need to have some humility and be humble about it and be thankful and not boastful and too proud, right? Yeah. We just need to be able to stay grounded and 10 toes down and not get ahead of ourselves. And I just love that. And when I see people like that, it's an admiration, because that's where you want to be, right? You want to be able to not show off, but you want to be able to say, hey, I can, but I don't have to.
Yeah. Now, you obviously had a lot of gifts and talents, okay? Running a business, connecting with people, sharing, giving advice. You have all that comes from your life experience. That's what I'm learning. Like, you've experienced quite a bit. But there's always mentors. You've mentioned a few people. But maybe a little closer to now, what does a mentor look for an older gentleman that's already in business? You already have a lot of wisdom, right? But we still have to find people that kind of mentor us and inspire us. How does that look later in our life? Because when you're young, you need it because we don't know no better.
Right.
But when you get older, you feel like you don't.
Yeah.
But I still believe in mentorship. How do you feel about it, and who's someone who's kind of mentoring you even till today?
Absolutely. And so that's an important part, because we always have to have mentors and people who can pour into us, because once again, never be the smartest person in the room. Yeah. But if you are, change rooms, right? And so it was, I can go back to who I have now, but I'll get to that here in a second. But books were the most important thing that I learned, that I needed to continue to put the correct things in my ears and read the correct things. So that way, audio books, visual books, you know me, I have always sending someone a book. I have a book for everything, but I love to read and I love to educate myself. But then when it comes down to practical knowledge, nothing beats having a mentor. And it's like, I think of Mr. Jim Schuessler, same deal, great person, let's do several businesses, done different things throughout the city, and been, he's had businesses after businesses, but he's able to pour in and say, yeah, I would do this or that, or I wouldn't do this, but here's what you need to do first, and then do this second. And those things are invaluable. It saves you time and effort, because we don't need to fall into the same pitfalls that someone else did. And then the other one is, it's a gentleman that I really just met as a client, but he's really become a really good mentor to tell me. That's Mr. George. And same deal. It was like, I asked him a question, like, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do different?
That's a tough question.
Oh, but he spot on. He just knocked it out of the park quickly. It's like, I would have not sold the first thing that I built that I was proud of. I would have continued on and done some other things along with it and beside it, but not just stop that and move to something else, because that's where we come to. You're talking about wearing many hats, and you learn to spin plates, but we always have to have multiple streams of income, because anything that's stagnant is dead. So if you have multiple streams of income, if one stream shuts off, you still have a stream flowing in.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And for us, I've learned watching them is that you have to have inlets and outlets, because the Dead Sea, right? There's only inlets and no outlets, but that's why it's the Dead Sea. There's nothing living in the Dead Sea because there's no outlet, because we have to learn to give as much as we get.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing that I pick up from my mentors and watching how they move. They're giving, so they're going to have a 501c3. They're going to have some kind of a charity. They're making sure that they're giving back and that they're giving to their organization of choice, or whatever it is they're giving. And they're setting things up for other people. And it's not just for them, because once you get to a point in life, you can have everything you want, then what's it all for?
Yeah.
But when you're doing it for the purpose of building it and doing it for the greater good, then that's what success looks like to me. And that's what I'm learning from my mentors today.
Yeah. What's your biggest fear and how do you manage it?
My biggest fear is just time.
Well, hold on. Let me. Time. Okay. Don't lose your train of thought.
Okay, sure.
I want to preface it for the people listening. Sometimes we're moving so fast. We're doing things that we enjoy. We're looking for thrills and we're looking for smiles and laughs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's always these things that are around us that we don't want to touch or we don't want to face. But there's so much growth in fear. And sometimes we don't ask ourselves that.
Sure.
And we need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order for people to learn and grow, identify what you fear and learn to manage it. You may not ever be able to overcome it. There's some true fears that are going to exist. So what's a fear that you have? And how have you learned to manage it? Maybe you've overcome it, but we'll start with managing it.
But yeah, so and then I'll digress and say that fear for me is fear is false evidence appearing real. So I don't fear anything, but I'm mindful of my time, and those are the things that's an asset that we can't get back. That's the most valuable asset that we have is our time, and that. We always, so my fear is being empty. And so I love to pour, but you can't pour out of an empty vessel. So you have to learn to recharge and rethink. And time is that of the essence. And sometimes when you have new businesses and you have family and you have life, time will escape you, because you'll look up and next thing you know, it's a month, a year has gone by. And if I don't set goals and timelines to make sure that we accomplish the things that we need to accomplish, you run the risk of running out of time. So making sure that everything has its place and an order and putting framework. And I guess my biggest obstacle or challenge is just being able to put framework around that time, because we only have that 84,600 seconds in a day. Right, so we need to make sure that we value and we use it correctly. And my hurdle and my roadblock time at some points it's just time, right? Making sure we're spending our time in the correct places and that they're placing our assets in the right thing where you can see that return on investment, not just wasting time.
Yeah. What's something that people often misunderstand about you? For me, I'm an introvert. Obviously, you've never met that introvert because we have really good conversations and it's one-on-one.
Right.
But that exists. And so when I'm in public areas with a lot of people, I get anxious and anxiety, and it kind of shuts me down. And people misunderstand me. And sometimes they'll say, Sam's a bit rude, Sam's a little closed off. And it's never about anyone. It's always internal. And that's how people misunderstand me.
Yeah.
Tell me what's a way that people misunderstand you that doesn't connect with who you are.
Yeah, actually, most people won't get that I'm exactly the same way. I do. I walk into a strange room and I will be very apprehensive about. I'm reading.
You're telling me you're an introvert?
I am.
I don't believe you, but go ahead.
I'm more of an ambivert, right? I can be on.
You switch on and back and forth.
But the true definition of an introvert is that when you're around large groups of people, is that you're actually drained when you leave the situation and not energized. Right?
I can see it. I can predict it.
And an extrovert, they actually are charged by that that group and that feedback and that in those conversations and all the interaction. And I can tell you that there's times when I leave a big meeting, I speak in front of 1,000 people at a conference, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I leave and I need that moment where I can, and that's why I say that empty piece, right? So now I poured, but I need to refill before I go back out. But that same deal, that's important to me in that aspect. But probably the most misunderstood thing is I'm a very contemplative person, and I think a lot. And there's times when I am focused, and people go, he's upset, or is he mean? Is he mad? What's going on? But no, I'm actually just processing.
Yeah.
And to misunderstand that is easy. And my kids would be one to tell you, like, he's hard but fair. I will be fair, but I will be. It won't be something handed to you, because my life is, especially with my children and those that are close to me, is I try to teach how I live, and I want to make sure that they understand that nothing comes easy, that you have to work for it and understand. And so those things sometimes are misconceived as, man, it's hard. But no, it's just, it's hard, but it's fair, because I expect more from some people than I do others.
What's something that you're really proud of yourself to accomplish, that you've accomplished? Now, let me kind of add some parameters for you, because you've done a lot. Okay, try to focus on one that you're proud of. And because I'm trying to get to know Coleman a little bit more. Go.
Okay, yeah. I can tell you one of my proudest things would be my family. My wife would be. Those are the things when I listened to the song and started recording, like, 16. It's like if you go back and you start, it's like when you look in the mirror, it's like, man, you ought to see your kids and your wife. And so those are the things, those lyrics. It's like you've gone through some times while you're growing up, but don't give up, because, man, wait until the future and you'll see that everything turns out all right. So that you're going to be okay.
Your family and kids.
Oh,
what specifically?
Oh man, to have a beautiful wife that is an entrepreneur, a loving person, a caring person, and genuine and real. That's you don't. I listen and I see people every day, and I get a chance to counsel. I talk to people all the time, and it's one of those things where it's always something else. And listening to those stories make you extremely grateful for what you have. Right, and I'm extremely grateful for having a spouse that is an encourager and realizes that how many hats and what I do, that and anything that I do, I'm doing it for the family. It's not about me at all, but it's about us, and it's about leaving a legacy, and it's about building a life for my family, and that is paramount and first. The rest is just. It's what you call the icing on the cake, when you get accolades and somebody says you did this great or that or what have you. But there's nothing like going home and having your wife say, hey, I'm proud of you, you did a great job. Yeah. Or having your kid go, man, look at that, man, look at you. I see you out there doing your thing. So when I hear that's what feeds me. People on the street, so I'm you can get that from anywhere or whatever, but I go home to get fed. I don't go out into the world for people to pat me on the back and like to get fed, because I don't know what everyone else's agenda is, right? I don't have that crystal ball. I can't see, but what I do know, because I live with them every day, and I know their proclivities, and I know who they are, and they know me, and that we all still want to be together. That is what. That's my greatest accomplishment. I don't care how many degrees, you got more degrees than a thermometer, and that still doesn't matter to me. I could have more businesses than anybody knows what to do with. It's all right. It's okay. That's cool. Have more money and I know what to do with. That's okay. But the most important thing is that I have my family.
What's your definition of happiness?
My definition of happiness is finding a place within yourself where you can look back and say, I've grown and I'm better than I was yesterday. That makes me happy. So that's what my definition of happy is. Finding peace within yourself, to me, is a true definition of happiness. People who are not content and that can't sit down with themselves for 5 seconds without trying to find some other company or find some way to make a noise or disturb themselves, then that's a sense of unhappiness to me. But when you're truly happy and you can be content and happy within yourself and you enjoy your own company, to me, that's happy.
You wear your shirt, your common shirt is a Dreamcatcher shirt. So let's give a little intro into what Dreamcatcher is, and kind of like if someone's watching this and they're like, man, I like Coleman's vibes. I want to collab with him and maybe do business with him. They don't know how can people connect with you? And wearing Dreamcatchers, what is that about? And does that directly connect to what defines you and what, like, everything you've shared with us?
It is. It absolutely is. I actually came and we found this name while I was back in school for a business degree, and I was finishing a paper, and the professor asked me, what would you name your business? I'm like, that's a great question. And I thought through it, and I pondered, and I saw so many different things, and one that just stood out to me that fit the brand, because I like to connect people, and I like my interwebs and the way things work with the network. It's not that we chase dreams, but we catch dreams, because we create processes and put processes into place to where we plant tomatoes. We know we're going to get tomatoes. So the dream catcher also goes back to the Indian heritage, and there's a whole lot of pieces and components that fit. But the fact that that you could catch your dreams, that you're no longer chasing, because people spend a lot of time chasing, but without a plan. But you have to have a plan if you plan on catching. And so when you really want to catch something, you want to make sure that you put a plan in place and processes in place, and you know where the milestones are, because you need to know where you are first to understand how you can get to your destination. And so we built a plan through that, and that's what we do with our business consulting group. It's our umbrella for we have Pretty Crystal Aesthetics. I mentioned my wife, and she's great at what she does. We have Smoked, which is smoked simple syrup. As our partner Sam, it was born out of love. It's a labor of love that turned into something else. And then we have Last Call Contracting Services, which is the contracting business that, that's what I did, was project manage. And I mentioned before the engineering and working with my hands, and now it's more of organizing people and understanding details and putting details in the right place. And now my goal with all of this is not to individually try to work in all of these businesses, but my job now is to be a conductor and a maestro. So you have your tempo where you can just make sure that we have harmony and that all these things work together. And as we do that, then we build out a whole network that reaches out to the communities and people. And that's where how we enter the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce piece of it, the ambassador piece, because we want to connect, because all these things were built is to help everybody else and to build a network and to collab and to promote other brands and other people. And like the TheFailed podcast, this is, being in here is a gift.
Yeah.
Most people can't get. It's a gift.
Thank you for saying that.
It's a gift. And I appreciate that, and I never take that lightly, because that's one of the things, as we collaborate and we build communities, we never know what piece of the puzzle that people are going to play. And so with that, that's where Dream Catchers was born, because we're not chasing dreams. We're out here catching.
Dude, well said. Well, I'm going to put a link for people to find you and everything that you just shared right now in the description of this video. But before I finish any interview, being that it is the TheFailed podcast, I like to throw one final question at you, and that is, what's your definition of failure?
My definition,
or like, how do you see failure?
Oh yeah. No, failure is just the opportunity to succeed, because the books that I just read was Diary of the CEO, and that was one of the things, like, fail fast. Fail often, because the faster you fail, the sooner you can succeed. So that TheFailed podcast, and it may have failed once, but it never fails again.
Well, Coleman, is there any final question you have for me? Did I miss anything that I should have asked, or anything that you you felt, I left that out or whatever? Anything?
Oh, no. This interview is paramount, and there's so much more to come. This is the first, not the last.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for sequels. We got this going. This guy and I talking. We'll just have it sitting in the room, just chopping it up, and you just won't believe the magic that happens in here. And I'm so thankful for you and what you do for the community and other people. And it's a selflessness, and that's why we connect. Being selfless is important. Because if you promote everyone else, I promise you, they'll come. It's just the laws of reciprocity, and it just keeps coming back. And your cup will keep getting filled, and I can see it. And I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait to see what else is had in store for you up in the future, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. Guys, thank y'all for tuning into this episode of the Failed Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If there's something you learned or something you want to share with us, send me a DM on Instagram or just comment below on this video. And like I always say, thank y'all so much for your support, for watching, for supporting, and just, giving me thumbs up or whatever. However the support comes, I appreciate it. Thank you to Coleman for coming in here, sitting with me for this conversation. Guys, we'll see y'all on the next one.
Absolutely.